Thanks for tuning in, folks, and welcome back to Wham Talk 1600's Operating Theater. It's the only OR in all talk radio. I'm Dr. Dave Janda, broadcasting from our ancillary bunker, linked to our main freedom bunker in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. We're here live for you every Sunday from 2 to 5 Eastern, but we're also available 24/7. You don't have to go a whole week without listening to our power-packed information that will put you years ahead of the globalist constructed curve, the curve that ends in a brick wall with the smashing and the smattering of your freedoms and liberties and future and life in our constitutional republic. You don't have to wait an entire week. No. We are available 24/7 at davejanda.com with extra shows, extra content, extra guests, extra analysis, extra videos, archives to all of our shows available for you. Tremendous amount of free public information, but we're the real meat, in-depth analysis that I cannot speak about on the radio. Why? Because there are choke points still within the FCC, Federal Communications Commission, that would shut Wham Talk 1600 down in a nanosecond if I went there, which is why we have the subscription platform at $9 a month or 30 cents a day. Sign up for a month. But why would you just sign up for a month when you can get priceless information that puts you, as I said, not hyperbole, years ahead of the curve? We are there 24/7 for you. Stop on by. You will not be disappointed. You will be educated and empowered, however. Bottom line, folks, every week in our operating room, we dissect current events that are impacting you, your family, your business, our community, and our country. And we bring to our operating room information and guests the bought-off, lamestream fake media either ignores because it doesn't fit into their preconceived, politically correct, bought-off agenda, or because, folks, they are petrified. They are petrified of what might happen if they actually tell you what you need to know. This show is about your freedom, your economic, your political, your financial, and your health care freedom. An alert for our subscribers: I am going to be releasing the Insider Insight Show to subscribers. Normally we do that on Thursdays. It's going to happen tomorrow, Monday. I have a very special guest, Captain Charlie Plum, who will be with me. The interview has already been completed, and it's a blockbuster. Charlie is a former F-4 Phantom fighter pilot who was shot down over North Vietnam and was held captive for almost 6 years, 2,103 days to be precise. Charlie and I have a discussion you will never hear, see, or read, or experience on bought-off, lamestream fake media or on any other independent media platform. It is and this is not hyperbole, and I have never said this about a guest interview. It is life-changing to everyone and anyone who listens and watches that show. If you ever thought you had a bad day in your life, well, you're about to realize that we all have bad days. But Charlie talks about how they were tortured, and he was tortured on a regular basis in North Vietnam for 6 years. He talks about adversity and how to deal with adversity. He talks about the fact that millions of people in our country and hundreds of millions of people around the world currently believe that their governments have declared war on them, and that in fact, honest, law-abiding citizens in every country of the world feel as though they are POWs to some degree. And Charlie speaks about how you can make lemonade out of those lemons, how to deal with adversity, and how, in the long run, to make it work for you in your life as opposed to a detriment of your life. Folks, it's a blockbuster. I cannot put this up on social media platforms. It would be immediately taken down, and we would undoubtedly, our channels would be taken down. It's why we have a subscription platform. According to our IT team who already heard the interview, they believe that that interview alone is worth at least 10 years worth of subscription service in that one interview. I hope you'll become a part of our freedom family. And I hope you'll listen to that interview. I am honored to have back with me someone who is a regular and who has put your financial and economic freedom ahead of her own life. What she does is, and what her company does, the Camino Company, is they create a lifeboat for your financial and economic freedom with the insurance policy of precious metals. The deep state is not fond of what she does, and the reason is because she focuses on your financial and economic freedom. Adriana Reed has been with the Camino Company since 2011 as a trader, and she is one of the principals in the Camino Company and is one of the most honest and knowledgeable people in the precious metals arena. It is my honor to welcome back to our platform in Operation Freedom, Adriana Reed. Adriana, welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Adriana, you have gotten in a lot of hot water with the deep state cultists or globalist cult members by your discussion of what and who the Federal Reserve really is, because still 95% of the listening public who speak to their relatives or friends or family, their relatives, friends, and family, although our listeners are educated to this, they believe the Federal Reserve is part of the United States federal government, rather than what they really are, a group of independent bankers looking out for their own interests. Adriana, educate our listeners yet again, because this is critical, in particular what we're currently going through and will be going through in the near future as our financial freedom and economic, if you will, destiny is further attacked by the cultists. Educate our listeners on your take, which has been years ahead of the curve, on the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Federal Reserve is actually a private banking system that works with the United States government. They're not part of it. They were established in 1913 under Wilson, and we've had problems since. That's the best way to put it. They have control of our money supply. They can tell us when the faucet turns on, when the faucet turns off. They control our interest rates. And then on top of that, we have the overall Federal Reserve, but then they also have, each area will have their own Federal Reserve chairman to a local area. And they are privatized, so therefore they have no checks and balance whatsoever. They can't even be audited, and they have no requirement to answer to anybody, to be frank.
So, Adriana, this was recently written by Jim McCarthy in the Money Spiders about the Federal Reserve. Quote, "Sneaky and underhanded, the Federal Reserve has been sucking the lifeblood out of the United States since 1913, as you mentioned, under Woodrow Wilson when it started. Like a black widow spider, it weaves a web of corruption and deceit. Unknown to its prey, the Fed's bite is poisonous, deep, long-lasting, and brings financial upheaval and misery to Americans," end quote. Your take.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The fact of the matter is what the Federal Reserve does to capitalism is they take the morality out of it, in my personal opinion. Capitalism should be organic, and we should fall. People who don't succeed, that's just the way of the land. People who are successful, they should not be taken from. And what the Federal Reserve does, and especially we're seeing this right now, especially in our banking system, is they bail out whoever they want, and they take away the natural acts of capitalism and create it so that the mess falls on the American people. By printing money and doing the things that they do, they wreak havoc on society. If you think that recessions are natural, they are not anymore, and they haven't been for about 100 years since they started, just off of the basis that the Federal Reserve actions create these problems, and then they clean them up and act like they're the hero of the hour when they were the ones to cause the mess in the first place. What we're experiencing right now with inflation was all created by the Federal Reserve when we decided to print all that money, take away our freedom and liberties, and tell us that we can't go to work, we can't do this, we can't do that. all due to a disease that was frankly not something that we should have done in the first place. And we should have handled ourselves way differently. So the Federal Reserve is 100% to blame for 99.9% of the economic turmoil that we experience in our country.
Adriana, a couple of years ago, you were roundly criticized because you came out and you said, based on your analysis, this is several years ago, that we were headed toward a stagflationary environment, very similar, if not worse, than the 1970s. Stagnation of the economy with escalating inflation. And you put it at the hands, rightfully so, I believe, of the Federal Reserve and Congress that cannot stop spending incessantly. Well, Adriana, I don't know, take a victory lap or have yourself a beer, because this came out this week when the first quarter GDP, gross domestic product, was announced.
Yes.
It's a headline, quarter one GDP, much weaker than expected, consistent with stagnation, and then an inventory plunge as inflation comes in red hot. In other words, stagflation, exactly as you had predicted, and got tremendous grief from the globalist cult several years ago.
Well, it was pretty transparent when they started printing money and lowering interest rates the way they did. Our money's not backed by anything, and therefore you might as well just print M&Ms at this point, and we trade M&Ms for paying for goods. And that was the number one problem. We need to stop printing money just because we decide to. That's not how this works. We need to have some checks and balance. We do need to get our money back on some form of a standard. A gold or silver standard would be the most ideal of situations. It would help inflation. But then also stagnation. The problem you have with the GDP numbers that came out is they were very weak, as way lower than expected. And then on top of that, we also had a jobs report and earnings report this past couple of weeks. And you and I both know that I don't see this huge increase in jobs. I live in Silicon Valley myself. I'm right around the corner from Silicon Valley Bank in the tech world here. And what I see a lot of layoffs. And then we have companies reporting these high earnings now. Well, if people aren't working, then you have an economy that's not growing how the current administration is saying that it is. Which is somewhat what I would expect as they redefine everything in our society according to the Biden administration. And that's what you have to read between the lines and understand. The situation that we're in could be incredibly detrimental to every household in our country.
And Adriana, when we look around the country and around the world, these central banks, not just the Federal Reserve, but central banks around the world, have been accumulating gold and silver hand over fist, while in the process, people like Bernanke and Yellen, former chair people of the Federal Reserve System, have said, oh, gold and silver, these precious metals, they're barbarous relics. Well, Adriana, if they're barbarous relics, why have central banks been accumulating gold and silver at ever-increasing rates?
Absolutely. It's because they themselves are preparing for what the world's going to change, the way the world's going to change. One of the main things is, especially you have China is accumulating gold at a very, very rapid pace. And they've been making some very strong moves that are going to work in opposition of the dollar that we have to look out for, especially if they get more countries to start trading in their own currency. It could be very detrimental to the dollar, and we can see how that plays out. The central banks alone are prepping. Sovereign countries are prepping. And if you watch, the alliances that are made are the countries that are making these moves to purchase high values of precious metals. And our country is sitting back and we're watching.
So rather than watching, let's talk about folks taking action and protecting themselves. I believe, and tell me if I'm off, one of the most effective ways to protect one's financial and economic well-being is with the insurance policies of precious metals. One of the problems, Adriana, is when our listeners go to their brokers or consult advice with their family members, they're told, oh, that's a hard thing to do, buying precious metals. And, oh, why don't you just invest? If you want to do that, just Well,
Yeah.
invest in some paper precious metals. Okay, Adriana, take our listeners through how they should respond when they're told that, I believe erroneously by their family members or brokers, and then educate our listeners in the steps of purchasing physical precious metals.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, the main problem, and this is one of the things where I find myself to be the biggest threat against the banking system, the central banking system, the Federal Reserve, and our government, is because the product that I sell will make it so that you become invisible. And that is such an important factor during these times, in my personal opinion. The brokers want you to buy contracts because they want to keep your money on the books so that they have control of it. The minute that you and I do an exchange, you control your money supply, and that's all there is to it. The fact of the matter is it's this very simple process to buy physical. You give us a call. We're open Monday through Friday. You call up, you place an order. We go over your spending capability. We go over gold products, silver products, delivery times, everything you need to know. And then you pay for the metals. Once everything's all cleared, we ship you metals. And it is a very simple process. And like I said, I am the biggest threat to the banking system right now.
Well, and one of the reasons is educate our listeners, because when folks look at the paper price of gold and silver, it is significantly lower than the physical price of gold and silver. Now, one of the reasons why you are targeted, I believe, Adriana, is because the premiums that you apply on physical metals are some of the least, if not the lowest, of anyone in the country. Educate our listeners on the current premiums and where we are.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are seeing a very, very high demand, and many of the mints are having some difficulty keeping up with demand. Supply is actually very good and accessible at this point in time, but premiums are running a little bit on the higher side. We are keeping premiums as low as possible to make sure that everybody gets in before things really get a lot worse, which I think there's lots of potential for at this point in time. But premiums on gold are hanging around anywhere between 3 to 7%, depending on the items. We are seeing higher premiums on silver at this point too, due to very high demand on silver.
Well, and if we look at let's look at silver products. What are the options people have, and tell us about the premiums and tell us about the availability, because I heard from some listeners that when they went to their local coin stores, that there was hardly any inventory, and in particular with the 90% silver and the generic rounds, there was essentially zilch. Educate our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So especially with the way things are going, there's a couple of reasons why there's certain products that I recommend. Now, the 1 ounce rounds, just like you stated, the reason those are not in supply at their local dealer is because they are the best purchase right now, in my personal opinion. The reason I say that is we have Silver Eagles are also another option, but they're running at a $15 to $16 premium over spot, and therefore it makes it in some ways illogical to purchase. At the end of the day, silver is silver, and that's what the important thing is. The 1 ounce rounds run a much lower premium, and the reason why I recommend the 1 ounce rounds is there's multiple factors. Is number one, we get you out of fiat currency by putting you in silver, which is the main goal. Secondly, I do believe, unfortunately, they are going to try to stuff a cashless society down our throats, and if they win, then silver is going to come in very handy, if need be, to be able to barter or trade and to be able to still have some freedom in your spending. And using silver may unfortunately be what you may have to do. And so that's why I recommend the 1 ounce rounds. We do also offer more on the bulk side with 100 ounce bars. And lastly, one of your favorite items, my favorite items, unfortunately the premium is becoming insanely high, is the pre-1965 junk silver. And the problem is it is an item when it's bought, we can't make more of it because it's already out there. The supply is out there. So The premium is pretty high, but also junk silver, I do believe in many ways, is still going to be an accessible item that could benefit you in the future.
The operative word you use is people just call junk silver. And people go, why would I want to buy junk? Educate our listeners on what that term really means.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason we call it junk silver is because if you sit there and you deal with your coins that have no precious metals and, your quarters, dimes, right now they're dirty. So that's where we get the term junk. On the pre-1965, because it does have the silver in it, by the end of the day, if I've dealt with a lot of 90% silver, it turns my hands black. So my fingers turn black from the soot and everything that's on it. So it's actually a misnomer, definitely, in my personal opinion. If that's junk, I would love to be a junk queen.
Well, so Adriana, where are we right now? As you have a walk-in business as well, right, with
Yes.
Camino. Where are we with buyers versus sellers?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm finding right now is we have individuals who are selling because they have no other choice. Inflation is affecting people heavily, even though they put inflation around 5%. You and I know that the government doesn't report anything honest anymore. So we do have people are selling for that purpose. Usually they do it with a lot of regrets, but they have no choice. Buying is significantly more than selling at this point in time. We saw, especially after Silicon Valley Bank, we saw a huge increase in purchasing due to what I believe is going to cause a ripple effect. I think Silicon Valley was probably the first domino to go with the banking system, as we watch and see what plays out with First Republic as well. But at this point, I can't say that any bank is safe at this point, in my personal opinion.
Which is yet brings us to another issue. Once folks get their precious metals, is it an overstatement to say the last place you want to put it is in a safety deposit box in a bank?
Yeah, so absolutely not. Please do not put anything back into the bank. Once we get you out of there, that was the goal, is to get you out of the banking system. Safety deposit boxes, the way I say it, you have a key and they have a key, and therefore it's not 100% yours, because Wells Fargo does not have a key to your house once you own it. They don't have a key to your car once you own it. So that's the main thing, is we don't want to put anything back into their hands. My personal recommendation is to get a good fireproof safe and store it at home. The reason I say that is accessibility, I think, is going to be very, very important in the future. That's the main thing. If you can't do home storage, which I do understand can be a safety issue for a lot of individuals, another thing to look into is privatized storage. I have found with the demand of precious metals, we are seeing more and more private depositories pop up. They have nothing to do with any of the banking system. They're all private-owned businesses. That's where you want to head to. And then my main thing is make sure that you do your checks and balance on everything that you're storing with them, that you make sure you know that they're in good standing before you store with them, that they have insurance fully covered, that they're a well-ran business. I think those things are very, very important.